Kevin Ryan, the chair of this meeting. And we had a couple announcements that we wanted to make up front. But before we do that, I just wanted to go around and have a little round of introductions. And as you introduce yourself, can you tell us if you took vacation this summer and where you went? Just as a reminder, since we're ending summer, just as a reminder. Oh, God. So, or maybe you didn't have one. I'm sorry. So let's start on this side.
Great. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kayla Sinat with the Children's Aid Society. Thanks for having me today. And I actually went to the Dominican Republic for a couple of weeks, so that was nice.
Couple weeks.
Good morning, Greg Hambrick, Model Sporting Goods. Went to Fort Lauderdale for a week. That was good. And the rest of the summer, outside of work, and doing home
I feel you on that.
I'm Sarah Haas from the Human Resources Administration, and I had a vacation, but I had relatives visit me, so there were lots of New York-y things to do on my vacation.
My name is Priscilla, and I'm a youth representative, and it was my last summer before going to college, so I just experienced it.
Where you go to college?
I went to Harvard now.
And you came here?
Yeah.
See how important this board is?
This is the Harvard of all youth.
Hi, my name is Erica Larson. I'm a student in Holly Honors College at Hunter. I spent half the summer taking classes at Princeton, but then the other half I went to Disney World. So,
Alan Chang, Assistant Commissioner for Youth Workforce Development here at DYCD, and I got away for a few days to Martha's Vineyard this summer.
With the president.
Susan Haskell, Deputy Commissioner of Youth Services here at DYCD. I had a week in Tuscany in Italy.
Wow. Nice.
You're the winner.
Yes.
Civil Silverstein, retired, a week in the Berkshires.
Liz Prince with Newburger Berman, and we went to Long Beach Island, New Jersey with the family.
I'm Bob Pergo with State Education Department, and I have a Corona in my bag. So this. I went to Newport. We went to Newport.
I was going to say better late than never.
Yeah, right.
I'm Maureen O'Connor from Queens Library, and I didn't get a vacation, but I am going in October just to Washington. My daughter bought a house. I thought it would be a vacation, but now I think I'll be cleaning her old apartment. And bathrooms, but
I'm Ray Winefsky, Executive Director of the Historic Trust in the city, and consultant to not-for-profits. And came back a week ago, and I'm sorry I sort of go back 2 weeks with the family at the house.
I'm Nancy Garcia. I'm the Executive Director of the United Neighborhood Houses of New York, and I was 2 weeks in the Northwest Catskills.
Not like Provence, but different.
Kurt Sonnenfeld, retired from Department of Youth Services, and I had been invited to a wedding during the summer. The wedding was in Vienna, Austria. So it was very nice.
I'm Nika Nurse, and I'm the Director of Youth Connect.
Where did you vacation?
Something small, Virginia, Williamsburg, Virginia.
Oh, that's awesome.
Good morning, everyone. Anthony.
Oh, wait.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sherry Zedling-Glade, the WIB Director, and I was able to spend some time in Vietnam and Honduras.
Oh, my God.
Before I came to the list.
Smart. Before you start a new job, take your vacation.
Yes.
Okay, Anthony Ng, Director of City Environmental Affairs, DYCD. Every year we go to Lewis, Delaware, so about a few days there, and then we went to Soccer Teachers to help celebrate my in-laws' 40th anniversary.
Well, I did not take a vacation. In fact, changing jobs, I did not take a vacation. In fact, I took 2 days off this summer to get eye surgery. That was it. I know, another day to get my hair cut. But, you know, I'll talk to my remarks. It's been perhaps the busiest, most productive summer in the history of this agency. So we'll talk about that later.
thanks everybody for sharing. That was really wonderful to imagine your trips. So we have a few items that we just want to discuss before I turn it over to the Commissioner. The first item is that this is usually the annual meeting where we do elect officers, but we're going to delay that until the December meeting. Partially to give time to bring new members on, and we want to give them time to get up to speed. And then the second piece of that is we want to give you time to actually make nominations between now and the next meeting. So we'll be in touch regarding the nominations between now and that meeting to get your feedback. And then the last thing is we distributed at the last meeting a document, I think it's in this packet too, right? It's in the packet as well. A document regarding the expectations for youth board members. And it's really a guiding document to help us recruit new members and also for everyone to be clear on what the goals and the responsibilities of youth board members are. So I would ask you to take a look at it if you haven't already. A lot of you have busy summer traveling. So, and give us any feedback by the end of this week if you have anything that you'd like to add or any questions you might have about that.
Ideally, who are you looking for to be members? Is there a description having to do with experience or neighborhood or whatever?
Well, my 2 cents on this is that on the youth council side, and we're discussing this later on, the idea of creating a campaign to increase the private sector work sites for our youth employment programs, ideally employers, people who connect us, because we want to aggressively expand the number of young people who work in private sector work sites from 30% now to a much higher level by the end of the administration. So ideally youth council. On the youth board side, it would be great to have people from the arts and media, because we know what works with connecting young people is the art. I mean, because we're prohibited from having people who have contracts with the city, so that kind of has out a lot of youth organizations. But in the expansion of the SONIC, Schools Out NYC programs, we really made a big push with the Department of Cultural Affairs to get some of their contractors to apply, and we got some interesting new providers, groups like Divas for Social Justice, which is a digital visual arts group, and who are the other ones? Perlman. I mean, some of them I'd never heard of.
And then like charter schools and then I have the list. I'll take a look.
But there are some arts institutions, so we know what resonates, and you know, what we're trying to infuse in a lot of our programs is science and arts. So people in those fields would be helpful.
To add to that too, is I think also some of the new sectors or newer sectors of growth in the city, technology I think is an important sector. Social venture or social investment kind of folks would also be helpful, I think, to that.
So should we forward potential names to Facebook?
And then they have to be vetted by the mayor's appointments office.
Yeah.
On the youth board side,
I think
on the youth council side, we working with the WIB have more direct appointments, and the mayor's also appointed, they don't do as deep of a screen. On the youth board side, they do a deeper.
Well, we look
Still there. So please, if you have any feedback, please send it to Anthony by the end of the week. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
I won't. The report is pretty detailed, but I don't want to steal the thunder of a lot of the staff presentations. But as I said, it really has been the most busiest and productive summer in this agency's history, and for good reasons. We expanded services. We had 10,000 summer youth employment jobs. We expanded the hours of our community centers and public housing to 11 o'clock at night. We doubled the number of middle school kids, and at the same time got ready for the launch of the new after-school programs, SONIC, which opened yesterday. 271 new programs. We're doing enrollment as we speak. Some programs have actually stopped enrollment and he's feeling waiting list. The irony is Deputy Mayor Richard Bury could not get his kid into his program because we have an online application process, which is a one-page to get the process started, but it doesn't guarantee you an actual seat until you complete the process in person with the health form and the signed parental consent and all those things. So he got an email last week saying, you're on a waiting list. So we expect to be at full enrollment by early October. The mayor is very impatient. He wants to have it yesterday, but we know with programs that serve early adolescence, it's, as I've said many times, it's the first time young people are making choices in their lives. So the process of what program to sign up for is a collaborative process with the parent. And so it takes time. They're consumers. They will look at what their friends are doing. They will look at what else is going on in the school, in the neighborhood. So we've told programs they have to be at full enrollment by October 6th. I expect us to be closer. Some programs will fill up much faster. So we're going from 44,000 program seats, which is all after-school programs, Beacons, Cornerstones, with the Department of Education funds, to eventually 71,000 this start of school year, and we're adding in the course of the school year another 7,000 or 8,000 seats, half of which are going to be in District 75 schools, and the other half will be in community, what we'll call the non-DOE sites, community centers, as well as yeshivas, Catholic schools, Islamic schools. That part will be coming out next month. But it's really been an incredible summer. I don't think we could have done it without the staff at USCD, who did an incredible job, and the nonprofit agencies. I mean, we gave people very little notice. I mean, we gave people 2 weeks notice about extended hours in public housing, and I remember the night before the meeting where the mayor announced these initiatives, he asked, well, when is this happening? I said, tonight. And he was like a little stunned that it was happening tonight. And that when he asked about, well, when are the young people in SYT who were being targeted in certain public housing loans going to get their jobs? I said, today. And because I think he was used to saying, oh, well, maybe sometime in the next few weeks. So it really is a credit to the staff at DYCD and to the nonprofit sector, because people really stepped up to the plate. And having been here during 10 rounds of cuts, it's kind of nice to be spending money. Yeah. So, and then
congratulations.
I want to introduce a new staff person who I don't think is here. Sandra Gutierrez is our new Deputy Commissioner for Community Development. I think she was invited, right? Yeah. Okay. So she'll be coming shortly. She comes from a rich history of the nonprofit sector, Children's Day Society, as well as very involved in community schools, as well as from the Latin American Youth Center, DC. I also want to thank Alan Chang for doing an incredible job in the 5 months as acting Deputy Commissioner. And as you'll hear later on, the next sector of growth will probably be youth employment, and I expect Alan to play a major leadership role in that. So with that, I'll take questions, and then otherwise we'll go to presentations.
Sorry, I raised a question. Having, as you well know, been through very bad times, and then having people, some of them sat around this table saying, well, how do you know whether it was any good? My question to you is, in preparation for what may be at some point a downturn, all these things that are going on that are so fabulous, is there something built in that you're able to turn around, or are there plans for this, so you can turn around and say, before September 2014, blah blah blah, as a result of executive school programs, some kind of thing that can answer the naysayers.
We're in the process of selecting an evaluator for the SONIC. In fact, the RFP proposals will return. I think we're reviewing them now, so that provider will start
October 1st.
October 1st. Mm-hmm. And then on the expansion of the hours in the public housing centers, the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice Services. Sandra, what'd you sit here? Sandra. I introduced you.
Oh, sorry, I just started to watch.
Oh, okay. The Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice Services is bringing in an independent evaluator because the Cornerstone expansion the hours was part of a whole multi-agency effort, including increasing police presence, creating staffing lighting in high crime development. So they're going to take a more comprehensive look at all of the things we did in public housing. And the numbers have shown that there has been a reduction in violent crimes from 15 target developments. So there is some data to point to, and in fact, we're trying to discuss whether to continue some of these initiatives in the fall. I have a meeting on Thursday to discuss that. But it's going to be data driven. I mean, that's one of the things I think this agency is committed to, is looking at what's the impact of the work we do.
The only thing that you can never do with those kinds of statistics is the line that says, when you say to someone, so are you happy? Are you glad you're here, as you say to a 14-year-old or whatever? And whether or not there are ways that will not carry the same kind of weight as police statistics, but some kind of way that gets instituted in all these programs to capture the human factor, which is again very different from, and I'm not underplaying, crime and so forth, and showing up to school, but there are all other kinds of things, and whether there's a way to be able to put something together that real researchers will say that's not well, that being said.
Alan can talk later on about the Wharton business study, and it's can we talk about it publicly yet? Or are you still
they would frown upon it, but they're very close to releasing a study on SYP that they did,
which is
from 2005 to 2013. Basically, they looked at education, employment outcomes, and also they looked at they're looking at interestingly enough, because they have access to IRS data, so they have both that and also mortality data, which showed some surprising results. So we're looking forward to share that soon.
That'll be fun at the next meeting.
Wharton Business School.
But yeah, no argument.
In terms of the Housing Authority initiative, that's going to continue next summer, right?
Right, I mean, it's our understanding the money is baseline, so it'll give more time for programs to staff up.
Well, that's sort of my point. I'm wondering if we can have maybe some sort of gathering to talk about lessons learned from the first summer. And
I think Darrell's been doing that. In fact, he had meetings midway to kind of figure out what best practices were.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some surprising findings, like Lou Zuckman from SCAN was talking about how they did cooking classes as a way of getting young people in the door after hours. And young men were actually was more popular among young men than young women. And so there were different lessons learned, and I know Darrell's very good about trying to figure out what worked, because some people struggle, because it's the first time in history, about 30 years, that's what the mayor said, that these centers will open after 6.
Right. Well, I just think it would be great to have the providers who did this come together to talk to each other about what worked or didn't work. Because I know it was a very compressed time frame.
2 weeks.
To get it
we had 3 days.
I know. And so I just think to do it again this summer, there's a real opportunity to make it better.
Yeah, Darrell, I'm sure will follow up on that.
Right, and before I'm going to go to Susan in a minute, but I wanted to introduce Scott Berger. He's the incoming chair for the Youth Council. He's joining us today. Welcome. And the official.
The WIB has the vote, right?
Next week, okay.
If they have a quorum, right?
We will have a quorum.
Okay.
Good luck. Good luck. Okay. So I'm going to turn over to Susan now to talk about the Schools Out.
Excellent. Well, we met last in June, and we were at that point just announcing the new name. We had done the competition with the marketing department as Sonic, which we're all very excited about. And I think just a few days after that, we announced that OST as an overall initiative was being called Compass now, Comprehensive After School System New York City. So since that meeting, we announced awards for 271 new programs in middle school. We held a hiring fair to help the 271 programs hire probably something close to 3,000 staff in order to be ready for yesterday. We introduced providers to the new initiatives and new contract terms. We met with As Bill mentioned, we had about 30 new providers, which is really amazing. We're building capacity, and we have strong providers. Nancy, we've got your groups and other groups, and we didn't have some of the larger, more established groups, weren't jumping in to add 20 new programs. So we really had to have new groups come in, like Divas and Real Stories, a lot of media groups, a lot of arts groups. Bill took a lot of steps to encourage arts groups. Bill had meetings with the larger providers who really did expand dramatically to say, like, what's your plan here? Like, we are not setting people up to fail. We want to develop infrastructure. What's your plan for boosting your financial practices, your organizational development? And we put out an RFP for capacity building along those lines, organizational development and financial management. We developed contracts. Over 99% of our contracts are in process with DYCD, and
78% of the controllers.
Yeah, overwhelming majority.
Not to be compared to any other mayoral initiative.
Bill loves to point out that we're doing this, if you lived through this OST moment many years ago with Bill, he loves to point out that we've done in a couple of months what took nearly 2 years to do in the past. Great testament to the infrastructure that was built for OST. If you take the subways, you may have seen the Sonic ads in 4 languages. Doesn't it look fun? One of the things we learned, as I mentioned, is that young people want specific activities. They don't want generic pictures of young people. They want to see what they're going to be doing in the after school, and they don't want false advertising. Bill's written letters to parents and CBO providers. So 271 new programs, as Bill mentioned. We're going to end up with about nearly 80,000 slots, 79,000 slots by the end of this year, which we know will serve more than 79,000 young people because they don't typically come 5 days a week. So if I'm coming 2.5 days and Sybil's coming 2.5 days, we can serve 2 middle school young people in that slot. So we expect to be serving about 84,000 people, young people in middle school through the Sonic initiative this year. Another thing that I love about it is the community that's being created through the marketing branding and through the fact that it's a mayoral initiative and that our commissioners has this kind of like unified communication. So people know, our providers know that they're part of something big, and I think that they're getting more support than ever before. Bill mentioned the pre-application process, and I've seen emails from providers saying, thank you, we've never been fully enrolled this quickly. This is great that we're able to centralize support better than ever before for the work of the providers. So we're super excited about those numbers, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have about the middle school launch.
So Susan, what's included under the label Sonic?
Just middle school compass programs. So
not beacons, not. Right.
Well, that's an excellent question. Internally, and when we use the word Sonic, we're really just talking about the formerly OST middle school programs. But we're also looking more collaboratively at the work that we do as an agency as a whole. So as an example, when we needed to double the middle school summer opportunities, we looked to our partners at Beacon and Cornerstone this summer to add middle school slots. So that wasn't Sonic, but it was part of the mayor's overall middle school expansion. So even when he talks beyond our 84,000 to the city's investment as a whole in middle school, including DOE 21st Century programs, Beacon, they're all part of middle school expansion, but they're not technically Sonic. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm sorry, I was looking at my notes from last week, so I'm not sure how you were batting lead off. I moved you second in the lineup, so my lineup part's out of place. But let's go back to you for the workforce investment.
Sure. So thank you everyone for having me, and I want to echo Commissioner Chong's statement just around the team here at DYCD. So much of the work that we do with the Workforce Investment Board really happens at the agencies, and DYCD is one of our critical partners. So I definitely want to thank the WIB and WIA team here. It's a true partnership. There's some really good news happening at the WIB that I'm very excited to share. One is, as some of you might know, the WIB has not been able to move forward in some of its business because of we needed to add some business members. And so the mayor appointed 90 business members over the summer, which means that now we are in accordance with the business majority requirement as required by WIA. And our next meeting is next week Thursday, on Thursday, September 18th. So we hope that we will have all of our members present and quorum present, and those that are members of the WIB are shaking their heads yes, so that makes me happy. We need you there. You might also know that all of our WIB meetings are public meetings, so certainly anybody can join us as a guest and as an observer if you are interested in doing so. We certainly welcome you. The other component that's really big on the horizon is the transition from the Workforce Investment Act to the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which is essentially the reauthorization of WIA, but comes with some new components that I think, across the city right now, we're reviewing that piece of legislation and determining what excites us about it and maybe what doesn't excite us so much about it. So the transition and implementation period is going to be quite lengthy. It's expected that implementation will start July 1, 2015, so we do have some time, but it is a pretty big piece of legislation, just like WIA was. So we've already started working with the BYCD here, as well as our partners at SDS and some others, to start to really get into the details of that, determine components, challenges potentially of implementation in transitioning from WIA to WIOA. So that's something that you'll be hearing about quite regularly, not only in these meetings, but also at the meetings. And then the last part of the update that I want to share with you is every year we're required to complete what's called a local plan. It's required through WIA. And right now we have completed that local plan, again, in partnership with BYCD and SBS. And that plan is listed on our website at nyc.gov/WKDEV for a 30-day public review, public comment period. So it's up there for anyone to read it, anyone to provide comments to us in terms of where they think, if they think where we're going is right or not right. So we certainly invite you to read that document if you wish, or share it with others as you see fit. I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, I guess my question was about one of the mayor has appointed a jobs task force.
Yeah.
I see that's lower down on the agenda. I was just wondering if you were part of that.
Yeah, so actually the Mayor's Office of Workforce Development, which is where the WIB now sits, is spearheading, if you will, that effort, and is kind of the component that has worked very closely with the Jobs for New Yorkers Task Force, of which Commissioner Chong is a very active member of. But I will, once we get to that part, I'll weigh in or add to it, but there's a lot of work happening there.
Okay. I don't think Kevin shuffled the order
accidentally.
I think all these items that are coming up are all related to workforce. So it's good. So I'm going to give an update on the Mayor's Fund to advance New York City's Youth Employment Work Group, and Toy is actually here from the Mayor's Fund. She could fill in if I'm missing anything.
You got it.
But before I start with that, so summer kind of ended abruptly, I think, on Sunday when we went from 90 to 70 degrees. But the summer also ended for over 47,600 young people back in late August for us, because we had the second largest number of young people working in at least 12 years for the Summer Youth Employment Program. And so it was, Commissioner mentioned that we received extra funding from not only the mayor, but also from City Council, and we added almost 12,000 more jobs than we had last summer. So I start with that because the Mayor's Fund has been our strongest partner with Summer Youth Employment Program for the last, I think, 5 to 6 years. And they've been helping us raise funding to support this program, especially during the last few years when we dipped after ARA to serving like about 30,000 young people. And this summer, they also helped us raise about $2 million. And then we started having some more conversations afterwards. And what started as kind of looking at how we would expand opportunities for young people for the summer turned into something bigger, and that's what this work group has been working on. Looking at ways where we can fill in some gaps where there are needs in terms of youth employment, and there is the focus of this work group is really to advance career exploration, post-secondary exploration, so that young people who are currently in school and the most vulnerable young people in the city have the opportunity to make those choices before it's too late, before they become part of our disconnected youth population, before they, end up being the unemployed or the folks who, I guess, had those statistics of, labor market, not being in the labor market. And a couple of ideas. We're going to have some more firm ideas to share later on, but some of the things that the YCD has strongly advocated for as part of this work group is an expansion of career readiness and exploration, especially at the middle school level. And that really ties in closely with our expansion of middle school after-school programs. So we are proposing some ideas there to bring in more career awareness, not only just curricula, but also bring in private partners and other folks to come in to talk to young people earlier about what are some possible career options. Not because if you talk to most young people in our after-school programs or our school system, if you ask them what they want to do, they only know things that their parents do or their closest relatives or family friends do, and a lot of times it's not, depending on, which community it is, it's not necessarily the growth sectors that we're talking about in terms of the labor market. So doing that is going to be very important. Also helping them plan for what high school choices they're going to make, especially at middle school. We've heard a lot about the expansion of career and technical education schools, but what is being, promoted to young people so that they can make those choices, so that they're not stuck for 4 years, getting a certificate that they have no interest in working in, afterwards. So that's something that we're really keen on pushing forward. The other two things that we're also very adamant about is early high school too. Years ago, for a lot of you who were part of the Youth Council years ago, when we had first started, we were able to serve all 4 grades of high school. And because of changes in the legislation and because of the outcome requirements that were implemented, we, in the last about 6 years, only served juniors and seniors, or those in the last couple of years of high school. And basically leaving a vacuum for 9th and 10th graders. So we're also looking at pushing for, I think that's where there's a big gap of helping young people who are just starting high school to stay in high school, finish, because those are the vulnerable years. And then lastly, an expansion of the Summer Youth Employment Program, as well as our year-round internship programs to, as the Commissioner said, to expand to further diversify the types of options that young people have. So the increase in private sector, more professional internships for those who have experience working for, so that they're not doing, from the time they're 14 to 24, they're still working the same job. And maybe some of them are very interested in child education, but we have a lot of young people who are not, and they, year after year, they just go back to the camp jobs or maybe just filing books at the library, whatever, that we would introduce other options for them so that they can also further explore their career options and post-secondary options. So those are the 3 things that we're pushing for, and there's a lot of other stuff that the Mayor's Fund's work group, which includes partners from Department of Education, CUNY, Small Business Services, Economic Development Corporation, ACS,
Workforce Development.
And the WIB and Workforce Development Office. So it's everybody getting together, looking at these issues, and we're very excited because it's right up our alley. It's youth employment, youth workforce development. So
the only thing I would add is that one of the things we're thinking of doing, which doesn't require a lot of money, is to make the SYP application a portal to all the city-sponsored internship programs. It's a programming issue with the application, but depending on how a young person answers the set of questions, it will connect them to the other, there's what, 30 different internship programs in the city?
At least, yeah.
At least, and they're all on the DCAS, the Department of Citywide Administrative Services website. So after I actually forgot to tell you, I had a conversation with Suzanne Lin on Friday, and she said she'd be glad to figure out how to make it happen. Because, you know, I know Tom Helton, Tom's not here, right, has mentioned that other cities have done this, and on the city side, it's a simple thing to do. And eventually, I'd like to reach out to the corporate world and, again, offer our database as an entry point. I mean, the young person still has to apply, they still have to give interviews, but it's a way of tapping into our outreach. There's no one can doubt that we have perhaps the largest outreach of any employment program in the summer, an average of 125,000 to 130,000 young people apply every year. So we're building towards that, but you know that doesn't cost that much money. It's relatively simple.
So, did you want to add anything?
No, the only thing I would add is that all of our city agency partners are very excited about this interagency collaborative, and folks are coming to the table consistently. They're bringing really great ideas, and we're hoping to have something in writing in the next few weeks. And so I just want to kind of echo what Alan is saying, that this isn't just DYCD taking the lead. It really is about a cross-agency initiative. And it's really important that we have the private sector actively engaged so that we can have a diversity of employment and job training opportunities for our young people. So I'm really excited to see that this is on the agenda and really being pushed forward within this conversation.
Claire,
Nice to see you. Nice to see you.
I think Alan said that the mayor's fund raised $2 million last year. Do you have is there a goal for this coming summer?
We are in the process of identifying that particular number based on what our city agency partners put forward. So we want to make sure that we are realistic in our fundraising aspirations and that we're covering all of our bases at the same time. So that is soon to come.
Thanks, Twitter.
Could you explain what the early high school program is? Is that separate from the early college high school?
So the early high school program, what we envision right now is kind of what we had in place when we had dollars that served 9th and 10th graders, and a lot of it is, you know, the goal of that program was basically keep young people from dropping out, and 9th and 10th grade are crucial years. So it's everything from homework help to some of the career exploration, work readiness, and then also giving them a chance to work during the summer, so that there's something, or even after school. So those are all things that we're trying out to engage. It's kind of what we're trying to do with middle school, trying to engage young people with not just academics but other things that might help them think more broadly about, hey, this is something I'm good at and I'm also interested in, and you can actually make a living doing this, great. So we're trying to get young people that type of exposure.
Is the mayor's fund working with a partnership to advance New York City at all along the
Kathy Wild?
Yes.
Yes, we are. Gabrielle, who heads up the Office of Strategic Partnerships, is in contact with Kathy, and yes, they are definitely knowledgeable and involved in this activity.
That sounds great, because my firm, Borough Berman, sits on a partnership to advance New York City as well. I know they're doing a really big push for jobs. They have a task force as well, and there's so many powerful, much bigger companies than Borough Berman on the partnerships. I think it's a great way to really kind of bring in the private sector and get them involved, because we should be, so.
Thank you, Al. So we're going to just pause for a second. We need to take a vote on the minutes from the previous meeting. So all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Anyone abstaining? Good. Thank you. Okay, so Commissioner, jobs for New York.
Sandra and Anna can chime in because there have been multiple meetings of the task force, and I can't be everywhere, so we had to assign different tasks. But the task force was announced, I think, in May or June. Okay, standing outside, it's a beautiful spring day in the Brooklyn Army terminal, which I never knew existed, right by the water, looking out on Jersey. And it's comprised of representatives of business community, labor, nonprofits, and government. And so PYC is very much part of this. I think there's a recognition that we have they did a chart which struck me as agencies that had the largest funding for workforce development, and we were number 2. Now that's a little inflated because that was mostly SYEP, but I was just shocked to see that we had more money than SBS, which was sort of eye-opener. But I think there's a recognition that young people are very much part of the landscape, and we need to figure out a strategy that we had a meeting with Katie Ball, who's from the Office of Workforce Development, and I said it's like a pipeline. That's how we see it, from middle school to college, and that we have to marry 2 disciplines, youth development and workforce development. And sometimes the 2 don't always integrate nicely, but I'll tell the story that Alan talks about in his middle school where there's a great story about. Why don't you tell it? Yeah, you tell it much better.
I don't know who I've told it to now. So I was sharing Bill about how middle school, this is probably about 7th grade, my class had an employer that came in and sponsored our class, and it was somebody from Exxon. And of course, the first day when they introduced the person from Exxon, all the kids in the class were like, does he work at the gas station down the street? What's he going to talk about? We don't want to pump gas. We don't care about that type of work. And he ended up being like a PhD in geology, and he traveled the globe, basically, looking at sites where they can drill and other things. And he took us on class trips to the refinery. He talked about what he did. Shared about his education experience. And for me, I didn't end up being a geologist, but I did take some geology classes in college just because of the interest that was that percolated from that. But I think it was a great opportunity because nobody in that class, in that 7th grade class, knew anything about what he did. And I think that kind of exposure, is what's driving, I guess, my passion for getting young people exposed earlier to what's out there, so that they're not just limited by the people that are in their immediate circle or in their family or friends.
So that will be, I think, how our piece will be framed in the task force report. When we met with Katie last week, we kind of wrote that down. So that actually is a very good visual way of explaining where PYC fits in. So we have to figure out what intervention works at a point where in a young person's life. So obviously in middle school, it's about career exploration, understanding what they want to do, become productive adults, and that's when they have to make the decisions about high school. And the first 2 years of high school is about staying on track, because all the research shows that if a young person doesn't make it to the 10th grade, the chances of dropping out are just guaranteed. And then obviously when they get to older juniors and seniors, they have a sense of where they want to go, and you want the internships to be, and the employment opportunities to be more sector focused. And so that's why we're talking about how, when we redesigned the in-school youth program, how to better align it with the career and technical education programs, so that young people who already have a sense of what they want to do, the summer job that they're guaranteed can be an apprenticeship in whatever field. So that's sort of how we're trying to frame it, at least from the youth perspective, is that how do you marry those 2 disciplines and see it as a pipeline to the workforce? And obviously there will be different strategies for disconnected youth, which is something that, and we try to figure out how to expand programming for vulnerable youth in somebody's employment program, but so all of this is part of the conversations that are happening. Nothing's been finalized. There's going to be a report issued sometime in October. So it's a very aggressive timeline. And it'll be a sort of a framework roadmap. And there's been no decisions on investments and funding. All that's to be discussed. But at least the main focus is like alignment. Because the city has functioned dysfunctional. So DYCD has not been coordinating well with SBS on a lot of things, or EVC, and that kind of ties into the next conversation about the campaign and how we can begin to align all the city resources towards one common goal. Alan? Yeah.
Anita?
Sure.
So as Commissioner Chung is sharing, around the focus of alignment, I just do want to highlight that at the WIN meeting next week, we will be talking and introducing a lot of the conversation, updating the WIN as well as engaging in feedback around really 3 pillars that the task force has been focusing on, as sort of like the undercurrent, if you will, to help frame the thinking around how can we better align, how can we make sure that we create stronger, better outcomes for all of the people in our system. And those 3 pillars, just very quickly, are building skills employers need, which is obvious as to why we would want that, connecting economic development investments to workforce development services and programs, so identifying where there are leverage points for us in the system, in the city, to make sure that workforce development is a component of the investments and purchasing power and things like that in the city. And then the last pillar is on job quality. So making sure that we recognize that there are many people in our city that will work in low-wage jobs, that those jobs will not go away per se. We're exploring what it is that the city can do to help improve job quality for those individuals. And so those are kind of the pillars that we have been framing with the task force members in terms of what it is that can be done. And certainly, if you're interested in learning more, we'll do a deeper dive at
Good segue. At our June meeting, we had discussed under the guise of greater engagement of Youth for Youth Council, the idea of us working together in the upcoming year on a campaign to, as the Commissioner had said earlier, to help increase the number of private sector work sites for our Summer Youth Employment Program. Now, in doing that, that will also have other benefits because that can also tie into how these employers can connect to some of our other youth employment programs that we have here at the agency. But we thought it would make sense to kind of focus on that ask because it's concrete. People understand Summer Youth Employment. It is our biggest program here. Currently, the number of private sector work sites in our Summer Youth Employment Program is about 30%. We'd like, in working with all of you, to try to get that to 60% by the end of the mayor's first term. And I think if we all put our minds together and look through our Rolodexes and our networks, we could help to work to get there. This idea has been discussed at the Jobs for New Yorkers Task Force, and we'll see if it makes it to its final recommendations. And if it does, that would be great because that could tackle the work that District Board and Youth Council does. So, I think at this time to help move this forward, we'd like to ask for some volunteers who want to serve on a work group to kind of dive into how to get this done, operationalize it, think about who's got what networks, what relationships, how we can reach out to what types of employers in certain sectors, and then just to in the spirit of alignment, just so that you all know, some of the industries that the task force has been discussing in terms of high growth sectors, in terms of jobs, are healthcare, technology, education, construction, and retail and manufacturing. So again, to the extent that any of you have relationships in those sectors, this would be a nice way to think about our work and can help to align things. Of course, these aren't the only sectors, right? If you have relationships with other sectors, that's great too, because we want a diversity of options. But again, it'd be great to think about this as well. So, in terms of the task force, what I'm envisioning right now is, if we have some volunteers, we'll probably have at least an initial call, maybe in a meeting, and between now and the next Youth for Youth Council meeting. And I'm envisioning that at that meeting we kind of present and discuss at that meeting, the plan and how we operationalize it. How we reach out to whom, the presentations we'll have to make to to those employers or to groups like New York City Partnership, reconnecting with them, because people have reached out to Kathy Wild in the past about this, and I think it's a time that we can re-engage with her on this. So that's what we're envisioning right now.
I think one of the things that would be really important is not to make any assumptions that everybody here understands what that means when you say looking to private employers. Does the private, as an example, does the private employer pay the salary, or is this government money? What's expected? The bottom line is that all of you deal with this on a daily basis, and when you talk to people, all of us, talk to people outside this world, have no idea what we're talking about. And so part of what the task force or part of whatever you do needs to be not condescending, but in really plain English. And that it is more than saying, hey guys, it's really important that you hire young people during the summer. Cool, what do you need? And so that, I'm hoping that process is clear.
I think that there has to be a different strategy for different sectors. So a good chunk of the 30% private sector jobs are small businesses.
Right.
So I'm hoping, and I spoke with the SBS Commissioner about being a relationship connector to all the Chamber of Commerce's, the business improvement districts, and I envision a team of Youth Board, Youth Council, DYC staff doing presentations during the spring about, hey, hire a young person from summer youth employment, you pay the wages, they're probably a young person who lives in your neighborhood, and their parents probably shop in your business. As a way of doing that from the small business perspective. I think for the corporate strategy, it has to be ladders for leaders. And that's clearly, Kathy Wild, the meeting I had with her like 7 or 8 years ago, it's clear that the corporate world doesn't want a kid to pick the lottery. They want to have a say in the selection process. And ladders for leaders is designed that way, that the wages are, it's like we get older, more motivated, more career-oriented young people who are either high school seniors, juniors, or first year college. We put them through work readiness boot camp, essentially, and then we send them out on job interviews, and then the employer, the corporation, will either hire them or not hire them. And that kind of fits in with what Kathy Wild said to me 8 years ago, saying this is exactly what you want. I get it. You don't want, you've invested a lot in these internships. You don't want to just hire somebody who gets through a lottery.
I'm just going to say that, and I know you know this, that when organizations bring on interns, like on my organization, when we bring on college or high school interns, we always want to interview the person. So I think that has to be part of the process, is they're saying you can interview, whatever, 3 and pick one or something.
But there's two doors. There's the SYP lottery, but there's ladders for leaders, and it's a slightly different. SYP, I would say, is it younger youth, would you say?
Yeah, the average is like 16, 17 year olds.
Yeah, whereas I guess ladders for leaders are probably 18 and above. So you're dealing with young people at different points in their lives, and I think the strategy has to be different.
It also, I think, that one of the things that, I'm sorry, which one of you said, is it's extremely important when approaching corporations, private business, that there is a volunteer, whether it's Youth Board, Youth Council, whether it's other people who speak rather than the city. So together you go, because there's a whole different impression. I'm not paid by the city, let me just tell you my experience, this is how successful it's been. And I think that the marketing and PR around this is so important. And one of the thoughts about looking to people from other fields is I would bet that there would be someone who might temporarily, who comes out of the marketing side, join a small little group of people around this issue, would not necessarily be interested in being part of an ongoing group. But an ad hoc, and utilize that expertise for a couple of meetings. People respond to that. It's when you ask for a long-term commitment that it's very hard for people to do. So you want to upload?
Great. I mean, I think these are the things we want to talk about in the work, like who are the right messengers, right? Who has the relationships, strategizing the approach,
marketing material,
and then how we can support you. What I would say also is, I mean, I think the priority for the ask is we want the employers to think about being a worksite for SYP or for Ladders for Leaders. But, you know, if they can't hire this summer, they can't do that right away. Again, there's other ways to engage these employers, as we discussed. You know, we want to think about career exploration. So can they, you know, come in and talk to some young people, or have some of their staff come in? There may be some other job shadowing, job mentoring opportunities. You know, the idea is that we want to get employers involved somehow. The ideal is hiring young people, but there's other ways to work with them and have them time to work
But
with
it's in
them.
the same way, for example, the Harvard Club. There should be a presentation to the Harvard Club. There should be a presentation to the Princeton Club. It's not, well, we're discussing this. It's not just, and obviously the chambers of commerce, et cetera, but if there really is going to be a campaign that says it's important to engage our young people for the future of New York City, then it seems that we need a plan, recognizing in the end, it's all very nice, how many we get for Ladders for Leaders, how many we get for SYPs. We don't want to lose that, but it should be up here, how do we look to the private sector as it relates to the youth of the city? And I think it's this way.
No, I think that's why we want to make this a multi-year campaign.
No question about it.
And, you know, we were debating what's realistic, you know, given that we're not going to start really until January. Because originally I thought, well, we're at 30%, can we add 10% by next summer? I said, well, maybe let's shoot for 5%. At 5, and then another 10, another 10, and then at the end of this administration in 2017, if we're at 55%, we can say, and you know, the other reality is that SYP is a major funnel of staff for summer camps. So we don't want to like completely cut off the nonprofit sector.
Of course.
So there's a sort of balance. So if we get to 55% by the end of this administration, we can say proudly that, you know, more than half the young people in the summer jobs program work in the private sector. That will, you know, be a big accomplishment.
Just one last kind of thing about this is that all of you may be aware of the big screen at 42nd and 8th, right? On that big screen, as part of the plan, it should be something that talks about the numbers of youth that are working in the private sector or working in jobs, whatever the thing is. And every 3 months on that screen, it should say something, because who's looking at that screen? Not only people who are, you know, going through Port Authority, et cetera, but employers. And so to me, it's if we're going to do a campaign, and if the mayor is willing to put his thumbprint on that.
Well, I think we're going to go ahead with this campaign. I briefed Deputy Mayor Pioli last week. I spoke to Katie Ball, and she thought this was a great idea. This is it speaks to what we're talking about, alignment, you know, and then again, and it doesn't cost anything. It's, you know, how do we begin to figure out how we work better together as a city to a common goal? And so SBS is playing a big role in this. You know, we work with EDC, and there's discussions about, you know, they do all these big deals. What could be one of the things? Hire a kid. As far as you're getting all these tax breaks, you know, great job, do internships. There are different ways the city can begin to leverage its might. So, any other volunteers for the work group?
Myself, I apologize for being late to the Department of Education. My point is that the Department of Ed needs to be combined, so when we talk about how many kids are working in the private sector,
yes,
right,
all the ones that are DOE that are in the private sector also are counted as the citywide total, and we want to be part of the campaign or talk about how we all have one voice, all young people, and there's a lot of campaigns, and we may want to consider bringing in some of the other groups like Pencil and Junior Achievement and Explorers that also recruit, so that we truly are asking in a united way for jobs for young people in the private and public sector. The other group that we're working with, I know you are too, I think is the New York City Partnership, which is a large entity of private sector employers. We're also interested in looking how they can support these efforts. So yes, I volunteered.
Okay, so we've got 2 members.
I volunteered as well.
Great.
Right. So right now I have Ray, Tom, Elizabeth, and Greg Amber.
Right.
No, if Darren was want to volunteer, I would know the director on this.
Oh, that's cheating.
Well, I was going to say, your idea last meeting around reaching out to nonprofit boards.
And having their board members.
Because she deals with our corporate board members, and she might be able to add some insight. So she's not down here, so I'm gonna volunteer her and
Well done.
See what she says. Okay, I think
Can I make a
that's.
point without volunteering? I don't want to volunteer. I just wanted to make a point about, I'm a summer youth employment like alumni from many years ago, but I just feel like the face of summer youth hasn't, or the city's internship programs, I just don't think that, I think there are a lot of people who are working in the private sector broadly defined that likely came, I run a nonprofit, so I don't know if I'm private sector exactly in terms of what you're looking for. But I think there are a lot of us sort of like sprinkled throughout the city that come through that experience. And I just don't think the city has done a great job of, that needs to be part of the face of what these programs are all these people who are working throughout the city, where our first jobs were through summer youth employment.
I mean, I think that's part of the marketing. And when we ask employers, we have to tell them what the program is. And I think there's a skewed view of young people in summer youth employment program. They don't recognize, one, the different jobs young people already do. Like there was one young man who wrote an essay, about how he spent the summer at the medical examiner's office and how it opened his eyes to like something he never thought was possible as a possible career. And to the extent we can, how we market it, who's gone through SYP? My first job was in SYP, working at a community empty lot in Chinatown. So I think it probably had a connection to me ending up a career in public service. Probably. That's why I got radicalized probably also. So who knows? 16, right? So, but I think to the extent all that is important because I think it's the messaging. It's not just I don't want the campaign to be one about making people feel guilty. It's about a question of understanding the future. How you frame it, that this is the city's future. And if we invest in young people, we give them opportunities to explore and grow, that will end up with the kind of workforce that employers want.
But also the other is what you just said, is that positive to say, look at the success our young people have had.
Right.
And so it's not only former in terms of summer youth employment, but look at the ladders for leaders over these years. The numbers may not have been fabulous, but boy, that was really successful. And to identify and allow to be able to show someone that says, here's John Smith, who worked in, and some of those ladders for leaders places were really impressive, as opposed to, and I'm clearly know that it's important around childcare and stuff. Yeah. But there are the successes surround us. Models, how many did you have over the years?
Yes, distinction being the first employer, right? So
Yes,
back when it was called the Capital Program.
Yep.
Participating in Ladders for Leaders. So,
Yes.
and Models participates in SYEP every year. So a lot of what everyone's talking about, I share. I'm a big proponent of employer engagement because we're a retail organization. So we're attractive to youth who are looking for opportunities, but we also represent that sector where we're kind of that low-paying job because it doesn't pay a lot. So we have to add a lot more employers to the table. That the number of participants in SYEP is astounding, but the one figure that wasn't talked about is the number of applications. It's well over 100,000. 130,000. So we employed what, a little over 40,000, but what about the rest of the other youth? So we can increase that number to 70,000 next year. The addition of other employees, I think it would be great.
But the new WID members, do they even know that this is not an obligation?
No, but I mean,
it's
certainly a valid question. One of the things that we are starting to talk to our WID members about is the different ways that they can become engaged and support the work that's happening. So certainly, as we solidify these different initiatives and priorities, we'll be going to them with kind of a menu, if you will, of specific asks of how we would like to see them be visible, be supporters, be engaged. So, absolutely.
And if you notice in the expectations document that we handed out, this was one of the things that, we want to be really clear in this iteration of the Youth Council, this is what we're expecting and hoping of current members. And as we're recruiting new members, we want to be upfront and clear about the expectation.
And we will be in touch too about those folks who might not be on this committee to get your input. We want to make sure that everybody's involved in this process.
I apologize, I have a 10 o'clock meeting at City Hall. I don't walk that quickly, so take care.
Oh, you walk quickly. I don't know what you
Yeah,
compare yourself to.
Take care.
Any other questions, thoughts, or comments on this campaign?
One thing is, on the spirit of alignment, I'm just thinking about all of the other populations of people that are doing workforce investment or trying to place people in jobs. I'm thinking about the reentry community. I'm thinking about the community of people that work with quote unquote disconnected youth. I think it's a misnomer, but I just want to make sure that like as we're promoting, you know, kind of fresh labor and, you know, the young people that you want them now because you won't be able to afford them in 10 years kind of thing. Like we have, you know, New York has the best young people, et cetera. Just want to make sure that like we don't, I don't know, there's some cohesive, I know that there's a kind of singular voice about everybody deserves to have meaningful employment. And that when everyone has meaningful employment, we're a stronger city. And so just hoping that as we have, you know, having that this voice will complement that larger voice. And my other question is around like tax breaks. Just when I think about places like Modell's, I think yes, there are the intentional. There are the employers that will intentionally employ young people through a city program, but then there are all of the employers that just employ young people because it's part of they're their employee. They're people that they hire. And so, is there some way to entice? And I feel like that second group of employers might actually be more beneficial in some way because those are jobs that might last throughout the year, and it's just a different way of young people entering the workforce. And so, is there some way to, I don't know, inspire employers to either hire young people in the first place, or if they have them with summer youth, to make it really beneficial for them to keep them throughout the year?
Yeah, I think we should look at that. In some ways, I think that kind of ties into Ray's comment a little bit about part of this campaign is just encouraging employers to think about, you know, young people and giving them a chance and thinking about how to include them in their workforce needs.
I think Ray really hit it on the head in terms of who should be speaking to the employers, because there's a perception. You know, I have a wide network of HR professionals in a variety of these industries, but the perception of employing young people, they don't want to touch it. Or working with CEOs who, you know, want to employ people, the perception needs to be erased to add employers and to entice them. So what you said is totally on target, and I think that will help to entice these other group of employers that we hopefully will look to speak to.
And at the same time, you change the perception of young people that they're not just saying pants, loud, whatever.
I think that ties into your point earlier about SYP alums, even alums of some of the other youth employment programs. So maybe there's a way as part of this campaign to make them the face or, you know, key moments about this, because I think that's a very powerful way to kind of communicate, you know, who exactly are our young people and how they've been successful through these programs. So that I think will have to be part of, you know, what this campaign looks at.
Anthony, I totally agree, and I'm hoping Priscilla and Erica, even if they can't be present at all those meetings, can lend their voice. Like, we have a culture in the society that really has disdain for teens and young people in many ways, and we have to do a lot of work to show they're so much more capable than we give them credit for, and they're our future. I totally agree with that perception, and I think it's a bigger battle than just employers. It's like,
That's right.
Yeah.
I just thought it might be a little unrelated, but I've noticed that among my peers, a major issue is that there are a lot of great internships, but they're unpaid, so people can't do them. So, I mean, in some cases there are the employers, but it limits who can do them. So I don't know if there's some way of, I don't know, maybe just having a stipend for the employers that are actually already out there, but people can't afford to do, so they end up looking for a paid job that might not be a field that they want to explore. So, yeah.
I also wanted to add, I guess, the common misconception is that for a lot of jobs in technology, people are afraid that they're saggy pants teens or something, but that's actually not one of the major obstacles. One of the major obstacles to teens getting jobs in those sectors is release of information. So they're worried that teens will release through social media about their actual products or about their different campaigns that they're working on. So there's that concern as well. So these firms want to highly vet any young people that they accept into their firm.
And what doing signing confidentiality agreement doesn't stop someone.
That's a great point. I know Alan has done some work with placing it with the FBI, so we can show evidence that we can overcome those hurdles. I can't say any more than that.
Actually, I think this is good. If there's no more comments on the campaign, I actually want to give Priscilla a little time to talk about a youth coding workshop that she helped organize this summer, vis-a-vis the youth board.
So last year I proposed to Commissioner Mogrob and now working with Commissioner Chong and Anthony on a coding program that hopefully will expand itself. This year we had it in the summer for 1 week at the Johnson Community Center in East Harlem. We taught HTML/CSS. We had around 40 participants come in. We had people double up because there were only 15 to 20 computers in the room. But together they were learning on these different projects, and it was interesting to see how many people had ideas that they wanted to implement but didn't have the tools to implement them. So they didn't understand the language that was needed to code these different programs, but they had programs in mind that they wanted to put in place. One kid was a middle schooler in 7th grade, I think, and he had this idea for a messaging system only for preteens. So a safe messaging system called Toddler for preteens to message with each other. So these teens do have the ideas, and we got to show them sorts of job opportunities that they could have by taking them to Google, showing them the office headquarters and what kind of environment this new tech startup industry has and is able to offer them.
There was just a report that came out last week, and I'm sorry that I can't give you the source because I don't remember what it is, but it talked about the fact that everyone should be learning, starting at a very young age, how to code. And it was a major study, something that came out of MIT or whatever, and talked about the importance of that everyone, no matter what they wind up doing, should from a very young age learn how to code. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, the reason for that is when you're coding, you often run into problems with your code, so you run it and it doesn't exactly do what you want it to do. So the process of fixing that is called debugging, so you can look through your code and see where the problems are. So that sort of skill sets you up for critical thinking and how to solve real-world problems and reassess what you're doing and adjust to new circumstances.
Are there any programs running now? Any middle school programs around?
So this program I was proposing to expand into more of the NYCHA community centers, but we have a coding program that's creating apps, I think.
Right. This summer we have about 50 SYP participants who are working with a program that the Economic Development Corporation is sponsoring called Generation Tech. And tomorrow they're actually presenting all of the apps that they spent 10 weeks to build. And it's a competition. I think they've invited the mayor for the final presentation and everything. So I think the winning team or whatever gets $10,000-$15,000. They get to keep all the equipment that they use during the summer. They're all donated by various tech companies from around the city, and the tech companies also provided mentors, developers that actually work with each team throughout the summer, and help them not only build the application, but also come up with a marketing plan on how they would pitch it. So tomorrow night they're actually pitching it to a panel of tech executives, and they're going to vote on which ones they think are going to be successful and people would buy into. So.
Would there be any thought in terms of the middle school and after school programs to do something like this, but that's spread across everywhere? Because one of the things about New York that's there are always jewels in New York. know, there's a little jewel up in, you know, in the South Bronx, and then there's a jewel that's in Jamaica, and then, but to take something that says, and what I would try to do is figure out around this report that I had just heard about, is that maybe it says New York City, in addition to everything we wanted to review, is that we want to expose 90% of 7th graders to the basics of coding, including them in school, which is a little more difficult to do, probably than around after school, but something that is sexy, something that people in the city will say, wow, something that outside the city, that people go, New York City is doing that. So I'm just wondering whether or not, I mean, the coding thing was only because I heard this report that it's so interesting. But how fabulous it would be that said 90% of the kids in 7th grade and 8th grade are going to be exposed to, and then fill in the blank. And that's in addition to each of the individual programs that are around.
Just to add, so I mean, you know, part of it I think what you have to do is rope in again. You have to coordinate with other efforts that are already in place. So, I mean, I think the struggle is, I don't know how many people are prepared, but there's a group called TEALS, which is, I think, Microsoft organizes, where they bring full-time employees to schools to train teachers, or their volunteers there training teachers like 2 periods first thing in the morning when they go to their job, so that we can build up the capacity of people in the schools that understand how to code and then become coders. There's also Girls Who Code, you may have heard, which is a big effort. So there's like some of these other efforts which you might be able to tie into to help build capacity, because I think that's the biggest thing of holding back. Like, I don't know how many people could go to 90% of our centers and teach coding, but I mean, like, that's what you've got to kind of do.
But I was going to say, you're totally correct, and clearly one of the things about ID is everybody who's on staff says, oh, that's right, I don't have enough to do at this point. But the idea even of opening up, what's the place that we have all the exhibitions on the west side? The convention center. I mean, thank you. Can you imagine that to have, because of real planning, and that we invite 2,000 kids, and it's all there. So is that the same as an ongoing program? No, but it's a way to be able to introduce kids who otherwise wouldn't, and clearly to coordinate that with all the other kinds of efforts that are going on. So I mean, I recognize part of what I'm saying is, you know, there's the show side, and the other is substance. But can you just imagine what that was at the Javits Center? Imagine if the Javits Center and had to be incredibly well organized. Imagine how fabulous that would be to open that up to 2,000 kids. All right, so that's not everybody.
It's a great idea. Coding, I've done it. I learned it a number of years ago, and it can be fun and it can be really educational. So I think it's an idea to explore. So before we wrap up, though, we just wanted to open it up for announcements. If anybody wanted to make announcements about events, activities.
Anthony, are you going to send out a list of meetings for the coming year? I think that would be helpful.
Yes, we just looked at that internally, and it'll probably stay on the same schedule as generally the second Tuesday in March, June, September, and December. And then for those of you who want to attend the WIB meetings, Sherazad and I just spoke about how to make it so that the WIB meetings will be the week after, so that it's not stacked in one week.
Yeah, so the earlier you get out.
Yes.
Right. And just one more reminder, the next meeting in December will be to elect officers. So in between, we'll be in touch around the number.
You have a date for that already?
I believe it's December 2nd. It's actually, the December meeting for some reason was the first Tuesday. We had not scheduled for that for some reason. So it's whatever the first Tuesday in December is, it's that date.
December 2nd.
Is it December?
That's
yeah, so it's December 2nd. But again, myself and Ruma, you all know Ruma, right? Yeah. We'll be forwarding a save the date.
Great. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.